All right, welcome back to Melon Mondays. So, as people who are watching this will most likely know, this year is a midterm, which means the state of Missouri has a lot of stuff to vote on. Now, the largest viewed one, I guess, would be the open Senate seat, because Roy Blunt is retiring, and that had been the main focus of this channel for the last month and a half. But we know who the candidates for that are now, and what was briefly mentioned last week, and what I would like to go over today is the individual ballot measures that will be on the November ballot. So there are currently 5. I'm not sure if there was a deadline or if the deadline's passed for others. But as of now, these are the 5 that we'll be able to vote on in November. And just to get it out of the way, every 20 years, or at least it was decided 20 years ago that this year we would vote to have a state constitutional convention or not. In Missouri, a state constitutional convention question is provided to voters every 20 years after the prior question. Missourians addressed a constitutional convention question in 2002, in which voters rejected the question by a margin of 65.45% to 34.55%. So the convention consists of elected delegates that propose changes to the state's constitution. Any proposed changes, including a written constitution, must be approved by voters. So it seems that if this were to pass, which honestly, I am not too familiar with the Missouri State Constitution, but there could easily be things that need to be changed. That being said, who knows if this would do more harm than good, or not really be important. I would guess that the vote this year will be pretty similar to 2002. Obviously, I was, or I guess I shouldn't say obviously because you can't see me, but I was like 2 years old during the last one, and I haven't looked at any old news sources from it, so I don't know what the talk was around it. I'm assuming the vote's going to be the same, about the same. That'd be a pretty big deal to have our state constitution changed, if it were to be changed at all. Yeah. So, working our way back from that, Amendment 5 is asking whether or not to create the Department of the National Guard. Currently, the National Guard is under the Missouri Department of Public Safety. And so if you vote yes, the state of Missouri would create a National Guard with an executive department that I believe would become a part of the governor's cabinet. And voting no would keep it in the Department of Public Safety. I just said that. The adjutant general? I don't know if I've seen that word before. The person who commands the National Guard would be a member of the governor's cabinet. So they would become a secretary, I guess. It would define the department's purpose as providing for the state militia, upholding the U.S. Constitution, the Missouri Constitution, protecting the constitutional rights and civil liberties of Missourians, and provide other defenses as required. So an argument for this that I've seen is that in cases of natural disaster. Oh, right here. I'll just read it. This is from State Representative Adam Schnelting. He says, whenever disaster strikes, whether it's an earthquake or another Joplin scenario, God forbid, instead of the adjutant general and our military forces having to go through a bureaucratic process, he would answer directly to the governor. So the only argument that Ballotpedia has quoted, and honestly the only one I've seen so far, is that it would basically, from my understanding, give the governor more control over the state National Guard. And a pro of that would be the National Guard theoretically being able to respond quicker to cases of emergency. He cited natural disasters. So this next amendment would allow legislators to require a city to increase funding without state reimbursement for a police force established by the state board, and that's the amendment name. So it would allow the legislator to pass a law through December 2026 that requires a city to increase funding for a police force that was established by a state board of police commissioners without reimbursing that city. So the state would be able to tell a city or town or whatever that they need to increase their police funding without providing any help with increasing that funding. It would provide an exception to an existing constitutional provision prohibiting the legislature from requiring the state to reimburse local governments for any new or increased service or activity the legislator requires. The Kansas City Board of Police Commissioners, which is responsible for operating the Kansas City Police Department, is the only state board of police commissioners in the state. So this would only affect the Kansas City Police Department, it's sounding like. Okay, this would specifically increase the minimum funding to police force of Kansas City, Missouri. Now, over the last few years, I think Mayor Quentin Lucas has wanted to reduce the department's funding, or I shouldn't say reduce, but maybe shift it to other programs. And this could be some sort of like retaliation from the state government. So Kansas City is the only city that does not have local jurisdiction over its department, and therefore the only city that this measure would impact. In March, another bill was passed that would increase the minimum funding required for Kansas City's police department. Missouri law mandates that Kansas City devote 20% of its general revenue to the police department. That bill would increase the funding to 25%. So this is new to me. Apparently, Kansas City, as in the city government, is not in control of its police department. Well, I shouldn't say that. Not full control, at least. It's the only city in Missouri where a state board of police commissioners is in charge. So I'm wondering why that's the case. Oh well, moving on. I'll have to look more into that if I find out anything interesting or that voters should know, I will bring it up in a next episode. All right. So probably the most newsworthy, maybe not newsworthy, but the ballot initiative that's gotten the most news recently is the amendment that would make marijuana recreational in Missouri. It is currently medical, which from my understanding in Missouri, you need 2 doctors to sign off on you being able to get medical marijuana. Now right here, saying that the revenues outperform the initial costs estimated. Local governments are estimated to have annual costs of at least $35,000 and annual revenues of at least $13.8 million. So if this were to pass, the state and local governments would get more revenue because there is a 6%, tax on the retail price of recreational marijuana. Now, this has been getting some criticism from activists who have wanted recreational marijuana in the state. One such thing is that it would be in the Missouri Constitution, and it would be stuck there. An argument for that is that it being a constitutional amendment means it would be protected more, depending on who's elected in the future. And the argument against it being in the Constitution was that it would be stuck there and be harder to improve. Like one thing people are wanting to improve, sorry, I'll zoom in. One thing people are wanting to improve is that this current amendment or initiative limits the amount of licenses for businesses and makes it harder for people to get it. Start a business, I should say. My understanding is it allows nonviolent offenders related to marijuana to petition to have their records expunged. Now, I don't know if this is the same thing or if it's different, but that sounds like the people need to do the work themselves to get out of jail for this, which I've seen other states, I think Rhode Island maybe, where they automatically expunge nonviolent offenders, which that makes sense to me because, it was just passed by the state, not Missouri, obviously, but other states. And so now there are people in jail that, shouldn't have been there in the first place, in my opinion. But then now, the reason why they're there is not the law anymore. So it should be on the state for passing that law or repealing it, whatever, to get them out. But if you leave it up to the people, petitioning for it, that may or may not pass. I don't know. We'll have to see if this passes. The percentage of people that are accepted or turned away whenever they're trying to get their records expunged. And so I think there are reasonable arguments for voting no on this. This I don't know, I shouldn't say barely, but it was pretty hard to get this on the ballot. So some people are saying this is the best we're going to get, so vote yes. Other people are saying, we'll have more chances down the road. Let's pass something that is actually good instead of a bad compromise. So, like I said, there's Fox 4 KC. You can read more into it yourselves to decide. But yeah, these are the. I'm sorry, there's one more. The state treasurer, this amendment would allow the state treasurer to invest in more different options for investments. But my understanding is the state legislature has to approve of those investments. But it just gives them more options. That doesn't seem to be too impactful on the state. Seems like it would only be a good thing. I could be wrong though. The more I look into it, the more of an opinion I'll have on it. But yeah, these are the ballot measures for November as of now. And yeah, so there are a lot of things that we're going to be voting on. So it's better to know than not know. And if you made it this far, I would appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe. We're trying to get to 75. We are 17 away from that goal. And go ahead and like it to let me know. And, if you want to see something else, or if there's something I missed, or if there's something you enjoyed, let me know in the comments below. And I'll see y'all